coming to you live on tape from the beautiful Campbell Bell Building on the Square in Fayetteville, Arkansas. It's time for Northwest Arkansas Business Radio.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Business RadioX. My name is April Pelkey. I'm the owner and founder of Superior Marketing Solutions, and today we have Dave Bowman with us. He's going to talk with us about the Fayetteville trails. He's got a wonderful map that we're going to use for reference throughout this episode. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below in the video and we'll be happy to reach out and answer any of your questions. Dave, how are you doing today?
Oh, somewhere between hunky-dory and totally swell.
That's good to hear. Did you hit the trails this morning?
I did.
Which one?
Well, I was on the world famous, well, anyhow, we like it, the Neocasca Trail. Okay. Which is a trail in the northeast part of Fayetteville. Kind of parallels initially the crossover road, and then it leads up into Gully Park, and then eventually starts heading along Old Missouri to head back downtown. And would eventually hook up with a mission trail that they're working on significantly right now.
Fun. Do you bike in the morning or do you walk in the morning?
Yes.
Both?
Mostly I do the walking part.
Oh, okay.
I have a neighbor, name is Allison. She and I get together at O'Dark 100 in the morning and go walk, which is a neat thing about the trail system. As you can, it's there, it's lighted, and it's very, very helpful if you want to get out and work out a little bit.
For sure. You were telling me yesterday that you met a little furry friend on the trail.
Well, yeah, twice this last week. We had Brer Fox, little bitty guy, hopped out beside the road or the trail, and he proceeded to look at me, and so I talked to him, and I made the little kissy noise.
Universal come here sign?
Yeah.
For animals?
Well, yeah, all sorts of animals. And evidently it works with a fox also.
Okay.
Because he turned his little head and looked right straight at me, eye contact, and then he started coming toward me. And,
oh my goodness, I love that.
And I thought, okay, I'm not your mom. And he finally figured that out. He got to about 20 feet away, and then he thought, no.
My mom doesn't stand on two legs.
Two of those, and they're not foxes, I guess, but he was okay with it. He just kind of proceeded along his merry little way, and we've seen him twice now, so he goes down to the creek to have a little drink, I think.
Cool. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen deer out on the trail. What's the weirdest thing you think you've probably seen animal-wise? It's starting to cool off, so I imagine animals aren't going to be a huge issue anymore. But
they can pop up when you least expect them, and certainly deer have a tendency to do that. And I can tell you, if you're out there going down the trail and you see a deer jump across the trail in front of you, yay! And I've seen some really close, really high, but you really got to stop. Because if there's one deer jumping out, there's generally two or three more following right along. Yeah. And they don't always have a sense of the right depth perception and or foot-eye coordination. There. Yeah. They can cause you to have a little heart rate increases.
I'm sure.
At times. The neatest one, though, that I ran across was on the north side of Lake Fayetteville. That's this big light blue blob right up here.
That's a beautiful trail.
And the deer are there. And I came along a section and there was a deer standing in the trail in my lane, incidentally. You know, it's like a highway. You stay on the right side and, you know, if you're going this direction, but the deer was in my lane coming toward me. So I had to stop.
Had a little game of chicken with the deer.
It's kind of a wildlife kind of a thing. Right. But I stopped and talked to her and then gave her the kissy noise, and she thought, well, I guess he's not gonna, eat me. And so we established a positive relationship. There we go. And explained that I was just trying to go down the path and that I would use the other lane if it's okay. And she's kind of like, yeah, okay. So I'm walking my bicycle, And if I would have had a 12-inch ruler, I could have poked her on the nose with it. She was that close. And just watching me, and I was talking the whole way. If you're around a wild animal, you don't want to try and be real quiet and sneak up on them.
Right.
Sometimes they take that as a negative.
Oh, for sure.
But she was very, very nice. She took about a 6-inch side step so that I could go by, but I mean, still really, really close. And snakes, there's snakes out there. I haven't yet personally seen a pit viper, although I know they're out and around, but we do have some king snakes, some constrictor types out there.
We ran across a couple of pygmy rattlers this year on our land,
Mm-hmm.
and those are kind of nerve-wracking because pygmies and small rattlesnakes, especially like babies, they don't have their rattlers developed yet.
Yeah.
So you don't even know what it is until it's a little too late.
Like, okay. Well, yeah, I had a daughter-in-law who lived up in Bella Vista who tried to step over a snake wearing her sandals.
Not
it was a low
choice.
rattler, yeah, and it bit her in the foot, and she called my son and said, I had this snake bite me, and I said, what was it? And he says, I think it was a rattlesnake. And I said, well, are you going to the hospital? I said, well, I needed to finish the laundry, and he said, no. Go to the hospital. And she, well,
Not really
okay.
a wait around and find out situation.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a swelling situation that occurred. But out there, I haven't seen any, but I know there could be copperheads and rattlesnakes. But we did see one, I saw a big king snake. He was probably 5 feet long, stretched across the trail, and when I saw that, I pulled my bike over in that lane just to block it so that nobody would come up behind me and run over the snake. And so then I saw 3 bicyclists coming up, and I turned and I said, hey, anybody want to see a snake? And 2 of them, oh yeah, sure, come on. The third one was able to pedal backwards, screaming as she went, and it was like, I guess this is the wrong time for a snake encounter. But yeah, the neat thing about the king snakes is that they will actually eat the pit vipers. The rattlesnakes, the water moccasins, the copperheads.
All kinds of poisonous snakes.
So they're good things to have around.
Yeah.
And they minimize some of the rodent population, but realistically, they're not poisonous. So. We like those.
I remember my Nana was absolutely terrified of snakes. Like that was her one phobia. And one time, sorry Nana, but one time when I was little, I was probably in like 2nd grade or something like that. And she had a back porch, and we were outside, and there's a tree right by the back porch. It's a big oak tree. And there was a huge king snake next to the tree, and she, again, terrified of snakes. She ran in the back door and locked the door. So I was just standing on the porch like, Nana, let me in.
Yeah.
Somewhere concocted in her mind that they were going to take that tail and pick that lock, and they were getting in the house.
Well, there's there are a lot of people react that way, and another critter you see on the trail frequently are turtles.
Okay.
And
snapping turtles get you too.
Now there are the tasteful turtles that you can play with a little. I've got a picture of one. The turtle was that big around. He'd just been hatched. He'd just crawled out.
So cool.
I almost stepped on him. He just looked like a rock. He still had dirt on the back of his shell, and I knew that he had to cross 2 streets to get to water.
Oh no.
And so I stepped in and rescued him and put him in my hand and showed him to one of our neighbor's daughters. She is 10 years old now. But I asked her if she'd seen a turtle, and she'd seen pictures, and they had moved up from Little Rock, but no. So I opened my hands up and let her carry the turtle down to the lake.
That's
and
so cool.
Well, it was a family affair. Her mom, dad, and everything. We went down there. So those are the positive things. And there's a lot of those turtles that are, they're not going to be mean, but they will try and defend themselves.
General rule, if they hiss at you, you should probably take a couple steps back.
Well, there's ways to pick them up if you think they need to be picked up.
Yeah.
But if there is a turtle with a ridge down the back of the shell, and serious distinct circles around that, and a long tail, kind of like a dinosaur, and if they have like what looks like a hooked beak,
yeah,
that's the kind you don't mess with. They can be really, really mean, and once they bite you, basically we have snappers, or some I understand we have alligator snappers.
Those can take your finger.
When they can take a finger, and once they bite, they don't let go. They hang on.
It's the pit bull of turtles, I think it's safe to say.
Well, they don't, they're not shy, I'll put it that way.
Right.
And a little story, my wife's dad picked one up one time, and the turtle latched onto his finger. Oof. And he had to use a hammer. I don't know if there was drinking involved. Maybe. Anyhow,
neither here nor there.
Couldn't get the turtle to let loose, and so he had a hammer, theoretically trying to get the turtle's attention, but he was frequently hitting his own hand. And so we don't recommend that.
For sure.
But anyhow, yeah, that was back in the old days.
I've seen my dad have a crab on his finger before, and that ain't a pretty sight either.
Yeah.
I imagine very similar.
I don't think we have any of those, but I don't know.
Right?
Yeah. With sea levels increasing, we might have sharks. I don't know, but
I was about to say something about that. I just recently read an article where they're coming up the Mississippi, like bullhead sharks, and they're finding them in like the Missouri River, and it seems to be getting closer and closer to us.
Well, yeah,
it's wild. They can survive in.
They've had the sharks up as far as St. Louis that I know of, and maybe up further now. But anyhow, yeah, we're going to be okay here at Lake Fayetteville for a while.
That's what I'm hoping for.
But anyhow, and the trail system itself, if I might interject, for me personally, I have about a 20 to 30 second commute from my driveway to a trail. And that was one of the things that Matt at the city offices, Matt Mihalovich and others, they wanted to create a system so it's pretty much a looping format so that people don't have to drive with their bike on a rack to get to the trail. So you can open your garage door and pedal out and boom, you're on the trail. And that has been the project. That's been what we're trying to do to make it more accessible to more people. The idea when they put this trail together, it's a multi-use trail, and what they wanted to do with it was to provide recreation, but mostly it's a multi-use so that you can walk on it or bike on it, and that takes people off of the highways, off of the streets. There's very few places that you have to actually ride on the street itself. There's a few of those, but you do take care. And certainly there's ways that you can do that.
Well, also something we talked about yesterday is the amount of businesses that are popping up on the trail too, to make it a little bit more convenient, to get you some more longevity if you need to stop at like Trailside Coffee and get you a water or something like that.
Yeah, or sometimes they have restrooms. Those things are kind of handy.
Those are nice to have.
In fact, the north side of Lake Fayetteville, there is a city bait shop.
Okay.
But they also rent bicycles and boats and canoes and all sorts of things that you can do there. And they have food and they have things to drink. I mean, it's really neat to be able to go in there and rent a boat and go out, row your boat.
Right.
And anyhow, and they're wanting to make improve the water quality at this point, to where eventually we'll be able to swim in the lake. And up to this point, it's been not a good idea. But anyhow, the trail going around the lake is about 5 miles worth, and it circles right along on the east side. Right up there, they've got the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks, which is another place I volunteer there, and boy, it's a really, really neat package. The advantage that we have just being here in Fayetteville, having those resources, and the trail, I mean, it's lighted. It's 12 feet wide, centerline striped. It's not for off-roading, but a lot of off-road bikes do go down the trail. But it starts down here in the corner, down here at Mount Kessler. And that's mile marker number 1 down there. And this new chart, this is a brand new map of the trail system, just came off the presses. So that it's shown where the main trail is going on up about 13.5 miles up to the Springdale border. And then it goes, of course, beyond that, goes on up into Springdale and then into Lowell and Rogers and Bentonville and goes up to Bella Vista. So it's about 40 miles north to south.
Those of you that are watching, one thing that's super cool about this map is it's also organized by difficulty. So there's comfortable, moderate, and difficult trails and bikeways that are all written out on here. And it folds up. Do you have one that's folded? Look how tiny that is. You can stick that in your pocket and you'll never get lost.
And it's nice too to have that, even if you've been on the trails a lot, know where you are.
Right.
Carry one of these with you, or 2 or 3. The idea being that a lot of people that are actually out on the trail don't really have a firm idea as to where they're going or how far they're going to go. I talked to a family down in Dixon Street, husband, wife, 2 kids, and they were walking up the trail, and I said, "Where are you going?" They said, "We're going to Lake Fayetteville." I said, "Really?" And they didn't have bicycles, they didn't have anything. No water, no, you know, and I said, "Really? How did you know that?" And he said, "Well, somebody said just follow this trail and you get there." So I unlimbered my map and showed it to them. And this is where they were, but they'd have to go up around that way and then across there and then up through there. And then you get, I said, I'd try the car and go on North College, see the baseball fields. And
maybe start a little closer for your first time.
You know, and then you can get there.
Yeah.
So it is a kind of a handy thing. They're plastic coated, they can get wet, but don't recommend scuba diving with them. But anyhow, yeah, it's a good thing.
Definitely. What would you say is the biggest danger on the trails? This is something you've talked about at CRN a lot.
Well, my personal view of the biggest danger right now is a combination of 2 things. One is speed, and the other is people who have earbuds in, they cannot hear what's going on, and they frequently have them turned up loud enough that you don't really hear anybody coming up behind you. And especially now that we have e-bikes out on the trail, they can go along at a pretty fast clip.
Them suckers move.
They do that, and some of us who are somewhat, we might say, more aged than others, I'm not going to say older, but anyhow, our hearing is not so good. And if you have somebody coming up at high speed behind you and they say, "Pass left," you can't hear it. And there was a case of a fatality up in Seattle, almost 30 years ago, and a woman was hit. She was older and hit by a bicyclist that was going way too fast. And she fell and hit her head, and that was it. So we really want people to be courteous, and there's some instructions on some of the rules of the trail, and that is to really let people know you're coming up behind them and pass them on the left.
Just common courtesy, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, like what we were talking about with the animals, you wouldn't hear a rattlesnake, you wouldn't hear a snapping turtle hiss at your feet or anything like that.
No.
At least take one of the ear pods out, guys. Come on.
Yeah, and at the botanical gardens, I volunteer with the butterfly house.
Oh, that's so cool. I've seen some cool videos that you posted on social about that.
And I've got pictures of a particular butterfly that liked me, and he landed on my bicycle, and he didn't want to get off. And,
that's cool.
And eventually I finally put my hand down and he climbed onto my hand, and I put him up on my shoulder, and he was like, "Okay, fine." This was a couple of years back, but I still got the pictures. I mean, and
what a lucky duck.
That kind of thing is so neat, but the other part is before they're butterflies, they wind up being a caterpillar. And caterpillars are out there crawling around all over the place. And so when we're around the botanical gardens, but in the rest of the world, these little guys are crawling around, and they can become something beautiful and fly unless you step on them, and that happens. People are scared. We even have people think that they're poisonous caterpillars and poisonous butterflies, and we have to work on the educational side of that. But anyhow, yeah, it's a really a neat place to be out there, mixing in with nature, whether it's the deer, the turtles, or the snakes, the clever little fox. I mean, all that stuff. And occasionally, well, let's see, in the last several years, 3 or 4 bears. Don't see them too often at this time of year, but frequently they'll be heading through Fayetteville, following Mud Creek.
Oh yeah.
And going up through the Paradise Golf Course. I mean, they're just going out to see what the world is all about.
And just because they're not grizzlies does not mean that they're not scary.
Yeah.
We had a deer cabin growing up, and I remember one time being real little, and we had a black bear pull our screen door off, like while we were in the cabin, and just smelling food, I'm sure, or something of that nature, trying to get in. And of course, me, the kid, I'm sleeping on the couch, freaking out. Nana, come save me!
Yeah.
Like she could do something about this big bear on the front porch.
Who is that person wearing a big fur coat? Yeah. But yeah, and there's other, one of the nice things that when you find a nice, slow, or a gentle downhill run. I ride a recumbent bike, and I have to steer it, I have to pedal, and I have to stay awake because it's real comfortable.
I bet.
Yeah.
I've never gotten to ride one of those. I've always been curious.
Well, I wasn't sure about it, but I bought mine in 2008, and I haven't looked back since. But,
I bet my legs are probably too short to ride yours.
As it is, that would be a problem. But there's adjustments.
Oh, I see.
But anyhow, the other part of that is that when you go out on a ride on the trails, you need to kind of think a little bit ahead about how you're going to equip yourself. One of the things that in the world of aviation, which I've been involved in a bit, when you go fly an airplane, you file a flight plan so that somebody knows where you're going. And then when you get there, you call them back up and close the flight plan. The same thing really should apply here, because if you're going out on your own, let somebody know where you're going. Like I'll say, I'm going up to Lake Fayetteville. That narrows it down a bunch. But gives somebody an idea. Now, out there on the light posts, there is a mile marker symbol that basically tells you what trail you're on and what the mile marker is. This morning I saw a light out on mile marker 3.08. So I could turn that into the city. And they have a way you can do that directly. It's just called See, Click, Fix. And that's on the city's website. If you go to the city website, you see a problem on the trail, you can send that directly into the system and they'll respond in that regard.
That's awesome.
And safety-wise, one of the, like I say, the hearing problems that people are creating with their hearing, put one in and leave one ear open,
Right.
That's
you can still
important.
listen to music, but just be safe while you're doing it, for sure.
Yeah, the other thing I would say now is that effectively I think we're getting closer to fall.
I hope so. It's feeling amazing.
Not going to go on a limb yet, but I think tonight it'll be kind of like, a little chilly.
When I got in the car this morning, I think it was like 53 degrees. About, I'd say 5:30, 6 o'clock this morning. Now, I live closer to the lake, so sometimes it's a little bit colder out there, but that's how I like it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not a fan of the heat.
The one thing I can tell you in advance, that's something that'll be on the trail that would be dangerous, and that's leaves. Okay? You get the trails covered with leaves, and they try to keep the trails cleaned up, but sometimes the leaves cover it. Then if you get rain, and now you've got slippery leaves, they're wet, and you have to slow down. If you don't, you get a chance to meet with a fine orthopedic surgeon of some kind. It's like, yeah. I mean, wet leaves will stop a train in its tracks. That happened here on one of the scenic trains here a couple years back. So, be careful. Another concept is if you're on asphalt or a street surface that has a lot of rubber buildup or tires have gone across a bunch of times and then you get wet on that, that's also very slippery. And of course mud, and that has to play a part. But be ready for what's going to happen. Now the other part, I brought some things along here just as an idea. First of all, this is called a brain bucket. And sometimes it has been used that way. We don't recommend it. And since I've been writing since 2008, I've fallen twice. Very slow speed, laid down on the side, again because of a slippery surface. Having this, you can't plan when you're going to fall.
Right.
I had another guy come up, he just started biking, and he had everything looking good, and he had a bike with clips on his shoes to clip him in to get maximum effort.
Yeah.
And he pulled up beside me and started talking to me and realized he hadn't unclipped and just tilted over and landed on his side. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. I don't use those because I stop a lot and talk to people and help out when I can.
I'm too clumsy to do that.
having a little toolkit, really seriously helpful. Some gloves. I helped a little girl who she was trying to keep up with her classmates. This was 2 weeks ago. And I said, "What's wrong with your bike?" Because she was just pushing it and running along beside it. And she says, "It doesn't go." And she had a little bit of a tip over earlier. She was okay, but
hesitant to get back on.
Knocked the chain off of the sprocket.
Oh.
And she said, I pedal, but it doesn't work. And so I was able, she had a friend with her, and he went up to tell the rest of the people that there was a leader up ahead. Anyhow, I turned the bike upside down and was able then to thread the chain onto the sprocket little by little and got it all fixed. But I also had gloves, and it wasn't cold, but I have gloves that keep yourself from getting really messed up. So that's an important thing. Another thing that's a good thing to have, and that would be one of these little devices, better known as a first aid kit, because there's going to be people out there, and certainly I'm not an EMT, but having a first aid kit and giving somebody a Band-Aid, and if you want to use that, go ahead. Or do it on yourself. That's something it's good to have. Another device that I carry is my headlamp. Now, and you may have a headlight on your bicycle, high intensity, all that stuff, but if you're having to work on your chain, if you put a headlamp on, you can see what you're doing. Really, really helpful little device.
Flat tire, stuff like that. You can't exactly turn your headlight around to see that.
And there's these little puppies, either a wristband or an ankle band, that really increases your visibility. It's a super helpful thing. So lots of things that you can do. Having some extra water with you. You do have to hydrate.
I've seen a lot of people with reflectors on their bikes. Do you recommend they have it on their bike and on their person as well?
Yeah. The more that you're seen, the better off you are. So it's a thing. And for me, effectively, this trail system came in just as I retired. And at the time, my wife had a significant challenge medically, and having the trail system and a bicycle allowed me to be able to get active and work at least 3 or 4 hours a day, which caused me to lose about 50 pounds, which overall, the trail system, the bicycle, doing that and stress relief, I mean, it's just, and when you get out there and start riding and you smell the smells and a bird comes in and flies formation with you for a while, or you see the fox, it really releases some endorphins. It makes you feel a lot better.
Fresh air does a lot for your mental health, I think. I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And a body in motion stays in motion.
That's the concept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do, and that's one of the reasons that when I've been on the trail, I have met people from every continent. Okay, all the continents with one minor exception. I hadn't met anybody from Antarctica. But I saw a greenback heron out there one time, and I think he had painted himself. I think he was a penguin. So I don't
He's
know
a little
that
chunky.
part, but the greenback herons kind of act like penguins too, so they're fun to watch. But anyhow, yeah, there's just so many good things because of the trail, and of course the economic impact. When people come in, you see advertising like the real estate world, say immediate access to the trail. The tying people in and taking more people off of the roads onto the trail. And we've got a school that part of physical education is they take everybody on bicycles and they go out and hit the trail. So getting people started that way, and I always compliment them on their helmets because some of them have little mohawks and it's pretty classy,
For sure.
But and on my bike, when I'm coming up behind somebody, I have what's called an industrial strength dinger. Okay? That is a big dinger, and when I hit that, people hear it. All except one young woman.
Probably because she had both her AirPods in.
She had 2 earbuds in, and I have a squeeze horn that makes more noise than that. And I was yelling and honking and beeping and clanging and dinging, and the first time she realized that I was passing her was when she saw my wheel passing in front of her, her peripheral vision picked me up. And so I pulled over, I said, can we talk for a minute? And so we talked, and I explained, and I demonstrated what I was doing when I came up behind her. And
she was probably surprised that she couldn't hear it over her
Really?
AirPods.
She didn't know. I mean, she was just, she said, I'm sorry, I was in my own little world. And I said, okay, but this is not your own little world. Now, if you're on a treadmill, or on a stationary bicycle in a gym, go for it.
Right.
But, when you're out here, you need to know what's going on. I did see one guy with Olympic supports for his wrists. He was in an Olympic tuck, and he was doing probably 30 miles an hour. He had earbuds in, and he was texting as he went down the, and I thought, but, there's room for improvement.
For sure.
But I am just so incredibly happy that we have the system that we have here.
Definitely. So I think main takeaway today is actually enjoy the trails.
Yeah.
Stop going out there and listening to your music, your podcasts, what have you. Go out there and enjoy Mother Nature because it's absolutely wonderful. Arkansas is the natural state for a reason, and it's absolutely beautiful. Take it in. I promise you'll probably feel better afterward.
I would double that and say ditto. I mean, it's technical talk.
Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us today?
Well, I'm just looking forward to doing more of this, and I really appreciate you taking the time to make this happen.
Of course.
There's lots of things going on, whether I volunteer at the Air Museum, at the Fayetteville Airport, and at the Botanical Gardens, and just lots and lots of good things coming up, so I'll be looking forward to doing some more of this.
Definitely. We're going to take kind of a field trip and go to the Air Museum and show you guys some really cool stuff in the next episode with Dave. And maybe I can convince him to let us take all of our camera equipment to the Botanical Gardens as well. I think that'd be a really cool shot for those of you who aren't familiar with the Botanical Gardens or the Air Museum. Definitely familiarize yourself on their social medias and their websites. It's both incredible projects to become a part of. Both of them, there's room for people to volunteer. Correct?
Definitely.
The Air Museum is really cool for kids too. If you have kids above the age of 8, Dave will take them and show them the cockpit of some of the planes that they have there, and I guarantee you your kid will absolutely love it. Thank you, Dave, for coming on the show today. This will end another episode of Business RadioX. My name is April Pelkey, again, with Superior Marketing Solutions. If you have any questions at all for myself or for Dave, feel free to leave those in the comment section or feel free to reach out to us. My personal email is contact@superiorsolutionsnwa.com. I'll be happy to forward any information over to Dave that you have questions about, and he'll be happy to reach out, I'm sure.
Certainly.
Alrighty, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you here next time.
On the trail again.